Dr. Lena, it's a great pleasure for me to be able to welcome the newest members of our community to Providence College. Class of 2019, our new faculty, new staff members who are here today. Although it feels a little bit weird to be doing this before Labor Day, summer is over and we are beginning. I taught my first class this week, and I had an interesting reading experience on Monday morning. I was reading the New York Times, and I read the obituary of Dr. Oliver Sacks, the famed neurologist and writer who died over the weekend, and one of my favorite writers of all time. The end of the obituary quoted the last piece that Sacks ever published in the New York Times just a few weeks ago, called Sabbath. And Sacks wrote a lot of autobiographical pieces when he knew that he was dying. And this is a reflection on the role of the Sabbath in his own life. He was raised in a devout, observant Jewish family in England. And now at the end of his life, Sabbath means something different to him. And so he writes, "And now, weak, short of breath, my once firm muscles melted away by cancer, I find my thoughts increasingly not on the supernatural or spiritual, but on what is meant by living a good and worthwhile life, achieving a sense of peace within oneself. I find my thoughts drifting to the Sabbath, the day of rest, the seventh day of the week, and perhaps the seventh day of one's life as well, when one can feel that one's work is done and one may, in good conscience, rest." What is meant by living a good and worthwhile life was the last thing that Sacks thought about. I next picked up Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics to reread the opening chapter that I was going to talk about in the afternoon. And it struck me that the concern of Aristotle in the beginning of the Ethics is the same as Sacks. The fundamental ethical question is, what does it mean to live a good life? And that's how Greek ethical reflection began. What would it mean to live a good life? And I told my students later on, that's the most important question. Like every professor, you think you teach the most important topic, but I said to them, I actually do. Because learning what the meaning of your life might be is the most important thing you need to learn. And the ethics can help, but so can a lot of other stuff. And I would submit to you, students, as you arrive here, that you can't escape that question, whether you read Aristotle or not. It is the question for all of us to answer in our lives and with our lives. And you need to begin to reflect now on the question of, what will it mean to have a life that turns out well? And my hope and my prayer for you while you are here is that you'll at least have a provisional sense of where it is you want your life to go, and some sense of what it would mean for you to have a life that turns out well. So that when you reach Oliver Sacks's point, you can look back with the peace and the serenity and good conscience that he had about having lived a life that turns out well. I'm pleased today that we have Dr. Sandel with us, because much of his book is about that question. What does it mean to have a life that lives and turns out well? And we'll begin that conversation when we've already begun it, but it will be the work of the next 4 years. And these faculty that you see here, their most important role in your life is to help you to figure out how to live a life that turns out well, to get the intellectual, the moral, and the spiritual resources and the vocabulary that you need to make the right decision about what kind of a life you're going to lead. Our faculty are the midwives of your own thinking about what will it mean for you when you leave here to have a life that turns out well. So I welcome you to that conversation for the next 4 years. It's going to be an exciting and rich time for you. And when you leave here, God willing, I hope you have a sense and a purpose of what your life is going to look like and how it's going to turn out well. Welcome to Providence College.